cocktail reception hosted by Bevy Smith, the legendary Bevy Smith. And I started talking with them, and truthfully, I had never seen a ballet. I'd never been to the Met. I'd seen probably dance theater, but I'd never been to any of the big time ones. And I just asked quite casually, can I get a ticket? And it turned out it was a ticket to Firebird. And I walked up and there's this huge picture of Misty in front of the Met, which was like, oh my God, I'm here at midnight. And so it's extraordinary to be there and to really see ballet and really see it at that level. And then there was a reception afterwards. And at some point in the evening, you mentioned to me that you were in a great deal of pain. I was like, wow, how did she do that? She's in pain. I just saw her leap through the air. And then, so as a storyteller, wow, there's a story here. And then sometime in the fall, you had surgery. And then I met with Gilda and Misty and just said, we don't know what's going to happen, you don't know what's going to happen. But there's a story here I'd love to be able to document the journey and what happens next. I'd already been aware of Misty on a certain level, but to really be able to watch, basically what I call an artist-athlete, go to a moment where they're here, they're in front of the Met, to have a moment where they might not be able to come back again. So they took a risk as well, because obviously no one knew what was going to happen. So we started, the first footage we shot was at Steps in the winter. So it just began that journey. And as we followed her, the journey unfolded and she got stronger slowly over the course of a couple of years. And also while she was doing this other phenomenon happened where she did a memoir in the children's book, and she started becoming a pop figure in the normal, obviously, eventually. So there was this journey that really happened that was quite extraordinary that we just happened to be lucky enough to catch.
And it is extraordinary because the camera is there with every move, and you can sort of just feel the pressure, Misty, and the heartbreak, and the hope, and the exhilaration, and through every step of the way. Talk to us a little bit about that injury, because that was pretty significant. I had no idea that you had had that major surgery at that time, and as many of us probably, when we saw you on stage, had no idea what you had been going through. Did you doubt for a second that you might be able to come back and that you'd be standing in those toes that you are right now?
I think that's something that almost every dancer experiences is injury, not always to that degree. But you can't really allow yourself to believe that it's going to be end or it's going to be end. And so I didn't allow myself to even imagine that. I think I was aware that, well, clearly doctors were saying to me that this might be the end of my career. But there was this naivete, I think, that I had to have in order to be able to continue. And it's interesting just to be able to sit back and watch that process in the film. Something that I don't think I was aware of the degree and the magnitude of the fact that it was possible that I could not have gotten back to this point, and I could have never been a principal dancer with the American Ballet Theater. But if I allowed myself mentally to get and emotionally to believe that, physically I don't think I ever would have healed. And I just kind of went on with my journey like, this is still my goal. I'm old in ballet standards, but I'm going to keep going. Because nothing has ever really, I feel like, been planned out in a way that ballet standards have set for me. So I just thought, I started at 13 and that's not typical. I'm black and that's not typical. I got to 18 in 4 years and that's not typical. So I'm still going to be a principal dancer.
So just keep you not typical and you keep going. 2 months ago when I saw you, you said it still had not sunk in. In fact, you were quite emotional when you were on the stage with Ms. Wilkinson and with Carmen Delavalade talking about the history and the trail that had been blazed. Has it sunk in, and how is it feeling at this point? I mean, are you feeling this pressure, or are you just sort of settling in now and becoming that great dancer that you know you are?
No, it hasn't sunk in, so. I still just feel like me and this little girl that grew up in San Pedro, and loves music, and I still love Mariah Carey. And no, it doesn't feel real, and I don't know if it will ever feel the way you anticipate or imagine being at this level will feel. I just feel like me and how I've always felt, and I feel like at this point I don't feel the pressure, which maybe is different from what I felt before. A pressure to get to this point and to make especially the African American community proud. It's a little bit different now, but I feel like I am Raven, and I'm all of these amazing ballerinas that came before me, who have set this path that a lot of people didn't know even existed. And so I feel like I am them. So it's not me here in this position.
And that trail was blazed by Ms. Wilkinson. And if you heard any subtle applause up there, it wasn't even so subtle throughout. Ms. Wilkinson was applauding throughout the film. I want you to know, I kept watching her, and she was applauding every move that you made. But I want to ask you, because in some ways Misty has continued what you started. And I could see you watching her, and even just tonight watching the film, but even on the film watching you. Do you see yourself in what she has done, and did you see yourself tonight on that film?
It's not that you see yourself, you feel yourself, because as a dancer, you're going, I go through everything that she does, only she's doing it beautifully on the screen or the stage, and I'm sitting in the chair, suffering. Yes, she's so extraordinary. I just have such faith that everything she's going to do is beautiful, and it is. Her lines is with it, her strength is phenomenal, and she's just so special, so extraordinary. So she says that she feels herself and us who've gone before. Well, yes, we feel ourselves in Misty going forward. Isn't that a wonderful thing? I mean, it's so wonderful. It is a wonderful thing. It's so wonderful that it's been in ballet at all. And it's so extraordinary to see a beautiful dancer going on and on. You know, the journey never stops, and you never stop being the little girl, because that's what it is. That's what it is being a ballerina. It's being who and what you are, and it's all that you lived and all that you need to express. So I don't think there's ever time to sit down and say, now I'm a great ballerina and that's it. You're always traveling, you're always doing better, you're always that little person, that little child when you get up in the morning and you go to your ballet class. It is unending. Believe me, it's unending.
And clearly it never goes away. That scene of the two of you in Misty's living room dancing, and both of you sort of striking the same poses, was just magical. Malika, tell me, what was it like for you to work on this film and to sort of realize that you were watching history really being made when you were doing it?
It's incredible. I mean, it was incredible. It still is. Misty's an inspiration. Her persistence, her strength. I think, in the beginning we knew she'd already accomplished a lot. We had no idea what she would accomplish, and that she'd be named a principal dancer. So it's been an amazing ride, and really incredible. I learned a lot more about ballet than I never thought I would know.
I would also add the scene with Raven was one of the last scenes we cut together in the film. And one of the things that we talked about and we're going to make a commitment to do is make sure that we do something more length about Raven's career. Because there's basically an interview with Misty and Raven that went on much, much longer. Obviously we couldn't service all of that in this film. And there's so much history that Raven has. And we know that one of the commitments we made is to make sure that we do take the footage we have of you and create something about your career. Yeah. So that's something I'm saying for everybody, and we're going to do that.
Yeah, great. We like that. Well, I would imagine that some of you might have some questions, and I know we only have a short amount of time tonight, so I don't know if we have microphones planted throughout the audience, but If any of you have any questions you'd like to pose, there's a young lady right here with the hat whose hand is up firmly. Maybe we can hear you if you don't have a mic, if you can speak loudly.
Yes, I can project. Misty, thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. You are wildly inspiring to all of us performing artists who struggle with doubt. It's true. And you allowed us to see your struggle with doubt.
Women and just a lot of women who have been firsts. What exactly was that transition like for you? Do you remember the moment when you sort of like said, I think I can do this, I've got it?
Yeah, Raven had so much to do with that. I've never strayed away from being black. I'm biracial, and my mother is biracial, and my father is biracial, but something that my mother constantly said to me growing up in Southern California was, yes, you are Italian and you are German and you are black, but you are going to be viewed by the world as a black woman. And that was something that I always understood. I never felt any different growing up, but when I came into the ballet world as a professional, I immediately felt different. And Raven, when I saw her in the Ballet Roots documentary, it was the first time that I really understood what it meant to be a black woman in the ballet world. But also the power that I held to carry on this voice for so many. And that became this new identity for me. I think being a ballerina was the only identity I knew before that. And I was just so happy and proud to take on this identity as a black woman to represent Raven and Janet Collins and Virginia Johnson and all these black women that came before me. So it just felt very natural at that point in my life and my career.
That's one reason we put there's sort of a whole thing, sort of a homage in the closing credits, because obviously we wanted to acknowledge as many people from the history as we could. So that's our way of tipping our hat to so many who come before Misty.
And also having the film informed too. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed the necklace that you was always wearing. What does that necklace mean?
About the love necklace?
Yeah, constantly having.
That's because my love gave it to me.
There you go. There you go, special necklace. Yes, ma'am. Another question over here.
I have a bit of flu going on, so I hope you can hear me. I'm from South Africa, and we work here as filmmakers from South Africa. And I just wanted to say to you that when you made Principal, didn't only inspire African Americans, it inspired black women all around the world. Because my group of friends and I were so proud, and you were our profile picture for like. So I just wanted to tell you that.
So much. Raven should be so proud of Michaela Difference as well, who's from South Africa.
Raven, do you remember where you were when you heard that Misty had been named principal? Do you remember what you felt?
I numb and joyful. I felt, I didn't feel, and sorry. I did feel, and I didn't feel. You know how that is? I mean, it was not a surprise, because I knew, you know, when we took the flowers out on stage, when Misty did Swan Lake, when I went back in the wings, and Mr. McKenzie was standing there, and he bent over and gave me a hug, and he said, I've waited so hard, so long for this moment, and I'm so joyful that it's here. I'm so thankful that it's here, and I thought to myself, in the middle of a little embrace, I thought, that's it. She's ballerina now. No doubt about that.
So you knew it was coming. Any other questions from the audience? Yes, sir.
Hey, first of all, it's wonderful to watch. Now, I'm biracial myself, and I'm curious, Misty, when you travel internationally, how does the perception of your race change? Because I was just in Ethiopia, and I was surprised to find out that I was seen as white. And so I'm wondering, in your own experience, you mentioned that you traveled quite a bit. What is the perception? How does it change conceptually?
I think that it's different because of the ballet culture and history. So it doesn't matter where you are in the world. The audience that's coming to see ballet, they're used to seeing a white person. So anyone who is not that is different and usually not accepted. So it's very different from the way the world works. The ballet world is so far behind and not diverse, and that's why I've always been other when it comes to the ballet world, no matter where I am in the world.
The weirdest thing about making the film for us was, sometimes it felt like we were making a film set in the 1950s. Because some of the language that's used about black dancers, some of the kind of stereotypical thinking about the black body, this is stuff that you might have associated with like a segregated town in Alabama. But in actuality, this is going on at the highest levels of a very powerful international art form. So she's working in a world which in a lot of ways is very, very much in another century from my experience in the film.
Another question right over here. Misty.
I actually have a question regarding, do you think there's now a trend in terms of a healthier look as a ballet dancer? Because also was thinking about Shirley Wanley when she first started skating, some of the comments that were made about her body were just outrageous.
Yeah.
So the body, the question is about whether there's a healthier look at the body now. Do you think that's changed?
I don't know if that has anything to do with me. I think that it's something that evolves in the ballet culture over generations, depending on the type of choreography that we're doing, how athletic it is. The body changes, and I don't think that it has anything to do with the trend. I think that it's just something that evolves and changes with what we're physically doing. But I think that the image of a ballerina is definitely healthier than it has been in the past. I think that in a time when George Balanchine created New York City Ballet, what he viewed as a ballerina was, I think, on point with what was happening in pop culture and with supermodels and Twiggy and what was seen as beautiful then, and that's what a ballerina was perceived as during that time. And I think now we have such an understanding of how to take care of ourselves in cross-training and just being healthy and what we put into our bodies. So I think the ballerina's body evolves with that as well.
But you know, I just want to jump in, excuse me.
Please do.
In a way, her name again, Bonet, the skater, and you brought up, it was you, wasn't it? Oh,
So I just working on it. We used to watch it.
That annoyed me and hurt me and angered me because I felt with her case, it was very much like we had in ballet. They have to find something wrong with the body. You know, when I came up, it was excruciating because your heels weren't right. Your lower back, of course, was never going to be right. Your heels weren't right, your arms weren't right. There was nothing right about you. And I don't think sometimes they realize that it was because of your race, that they found you so unable to foster this art. Who knows the mysteries of race and mind, the perpetuation from eras and eras and eras. But I felt about that skater, I felt something so uneasy also. You know, I don't know what happened to her career, but it seemed to be rather short. And there you're up against it again. That image of who must and should be a skater or a ballerina. You know, their aesthetic sense, and only to that answer to that is whose aesthetic sense? Why is it that some people feel they have the superiority to have the aesthetic taste? Good question.
You know, one thing about the ballerina that we realized as we were working the film is that the ballerina, like the princess, is almost a mythological creature in world culture, and that she defined femininity in a lot of cultures the same way that the princess does. You know, the fairy tale, every little girl has the ballet costume, right? And that's the tutu and the ballet classes. And when you have a certain way that the body should look prescribed over generations, it has a terrible destructive effect on the self-image of generations of people around the world. And I think that's one of the things that Misty in her own way, and not just for black girls, but for women of all shapes, is really important.
And not just for dancers. There was a study done with these children, little children, and not too long ago, they put pictures of little, or I guess women who had reached more of an adulthood in front of these little children. And the little black girls always, they said, who do you think is beautiful? And they put these pictures down, and the little black girls would always go to the white person's picture. Now, that makes your heart just want to die, to grow up. They were little itty bitty things. So this is entrenched in our society, and we just have to slowly develop out of it. I think sometimes we didn't expect Mr. Obama to have so much trouble as he's had. So, you know, our society has to grow up and get a hold of itself, because it's a very self-destructive path we're on. We have to look at the whole world and see where we stand. So I hope that it changes with all my heart.
And this film may actually have a lot to do with changing perception. Malika, let me ask you, and I guess we have to wrap up, maybe another question from the audience before we do. What is your greatest hope? I mean, this film, of course, is beautiful and inspiring, but what's your best hope for this film, and who are you hoping, or how are you hoping that this may either change attitudes, or what do you want to see happen from it?
I hope it reaches as many people as possible, and to continue the conversation that we're having about body perception. I hope it changes people's perception of who can do what, you know, who's allowed to do what, and where, in what space. And I think Misty's really challenged that. So hopefully other people will continue to challenge it, and this film will inspire them to reimagine what they can do or be. That's what I hope.
Well, it's definitely well on its way, I think, to probably changing a lot of thoughts and ideas. I know it's getting to be bedtime, so we'll just take one more question, and you right over here, we'll take one more before we wrap up.